Hi guys, and welcome to Design Fundamentals, the design process. The design process can be quite a difficult thing to manage and work with. However, following it will help you when working on your next project. It will also help you or help your client understand roughly where you are in terms of timescales and within the entire process itself. We're going to take a detailed look now at how the design process works, basically the A to Z of the design process. And we're going to look at a 5-stage design process, each stage including its own separate sections. So first up, we have the brief. It's a written explanation given to the designer outlining the aims, objectives and milestones of a design project. You'll be working on this throughout, so it's critical that it's right, and some clients will write it for you, others will, when you go along to the meeting, give you it in spoken word, and you'll have to basically write that up. But you need it, it's very important. So whether you get this document or you actually have to write it yourself, it must be written so that it helps both parties understand what will be required at a certain part of the project at the start, any potential issues that are going to be come across, and it does help you see anything, problems that could arise ahead of time. So within that brief, you want to have things like the goals for the project. What does your client actually want the design you are making to do? Do they want to generate more customers? Do they want to have more contact through their website? Do they want more subscribers to a newsletter? Or is it just to obtain information from their audience? You also want to look at finding out more about the company, the background of the organisation, the sort of sectors it works in, the industries. Again, the audience, you want to find out information about the audience, such as their age, occupation, location. For the web, you need to find out their sort of technical abilities. Find out exactly what the client is after, so whether it's a website or a print design, and that will obviously have each of those will have their own necessary specifics that are just narrowed down to those. Deliverables, that goes both ways. You want to outline what will be being given from you to the client and vice versa. What will they give you and when, for example, your invoice or your paying. You want to look at budget and timing, have a section for that. How much will the client be able to pay, as in a ballpark figure. That'll help you determine how much work you can actually do for them. Timescales, we've already mentioned that, but you need to know whether it needs to be done for a certain time, and also outline timescales for each stage of the process. And also in your design brief, you want to find things like samples of designs that clients like, whether it just be for the colour, the style, the copywriting, typography, just anything about design that they feel works for their project. Now you combine all of this information into a brief, which will help everyone within the project understand the ins and outs of it, and also some clients will produce this, but for others you're going to have to use the information above to basically get out of them a brief. You're going to have to not interrogate them, but ask them questions so you can find that information out, so then you can write up a brief. Now we're looking at research. So using your brief, you need to do some research. Now a client will often do some research for you, but carrying out your own research is also very important. Now the best place to start is by looking at the organisation's competitors. So perhaps on the designs they've given you in the brief, you could look at those, but also just ask them who are the competitors. Now that's going to help you get inspiration to help with generating ideas. And it'll also give you a bit of a ground or a level base to just start working from. You're going to know where you need to start and things that perhaps you should be doing and shouldn't be doing in your design. And that'll just include things like how you'll actually display the content, and also establish user requirements for the design and how it needs to look. For example, style for certain institutions like lawyers and solicitors, they need a very professional sort of level of design, and one that looks quite clean and clinical. And researching again will help you when going through the brief. It'll just help point out any potential problems that could arise or any issues, and then you should be able to start working out ways that you can avoid them. The research process is going to give you an idea how other designers have tackled their clients' goals and potentially your clients' competitors, and that'll help you physically see or be able to visualize a kind of rough idea. You can see the sort of lines that competitors have gone down, and it will give you a way of perhaps thinking, right, we're going to do that or we're not going to do that with the design. It gives you a good visual starting point. And speaking of visuals, mood boards and sketches, kind of part of your research really. But this is where you can just start to let your creativity combine all the research and the brief that you've got so far into a mood board or a collection of sketches. Now you can do those digitally or by hand, just collecting screenshots of design elements that you feel work along with the project, or you could make quick block drawings of a design that inspires you, for example. Now all the time you do gather in sketches and mood board pictures and things like that, you need to make sure you keep your client's goals in mind. Get the design brief out and always refer to it. Make sure you're sticking to that. Otherwise you could really just stray off course, and in the end it could result in your design being way off target. Now the design bit, the good bit. Gather up your materials and start designing. It's important to keep your research and sketches and the brief alongside, as we've just mentioned, so keep those close by. You don't want to spend hours and hours on research, sketching, mood boarding and meticulously planning your approach only to throw it all away and do your own thing. So keep yourself familiarized with the brief, and if necessary make a small list of key points you want to remember, perhaps just the audience or the style the client wants to transmit, for example. Now you need to just get your ideas out there, so be creative and do your thing. Revisions. You'll need to do some revisions to 99.9% of your work, and that's because maybe your client isn't quite happy with it. Unfortunately, sometimes it's because it's not to their personal taste, but within reason you should take your client's word as final. If they refuse to not change something after you've tactfully explained why you don't believe it should be changed, then you're just going to have to go along with their word. Now when pricing, it's always an idea to include time for revisions. How much you include is a little bit difficult, but some clients will have you revise very little. That's quite rare, whilst others will basically have you redo the whole design, again, which is quite rare. But the majority sit down the middle, who will have a couple of revision requests. So when pricing, err on the side of caution in case you have to do a redesign. Then a revision of that, you've got to factor in further revisions of a revision. Be prepared to have to revise your revision. It's just a matter of fact. And this can cause a lot of issues in projects. It's probably one of the biggest issues that slows down the design process and is an area where you could possibly fall out with your client. In essence, this stage for your client is all about evaluating, and they're looking at each revision, hopefully with an unbiased view. One handy tip though is to save your previous revisions, and that's just in case you need to borrow anything from past variations, or in case you have to switch back to one of your older designs. And then finally we've got the production output and deliverables, and this is really the finale. You've got the production. A design isn't ever really a production. You see, the final product is. You may well design a brochure, but the final product is the actual physical printed brochure itself. So you should know from your meetings or your brief with your client exactly what you are delivering in terms of assets. Now, they've signed off on it. Are you simply just handing over Illustrator files for their use? Or do you need to prepare your design as a HTML and CSS web page? Do you need someone to do that for you? The point is that this is the final stage, the sort of handing over, if you like, the completion. And you've worked through the entire process and should have a solid, well-rounded and specification meeting design at the end of it. So by way of summary, we've scoured through the design process from start to finish. We've talked about each individual step and how it will help you in your future projects, whether it's your first or your 51st project. And knowing the design process like the back of your hand is always good in the cases when a client asks, so what happens next or what we're going to do next. Now, your assignment before the next lesson is, if you've not already, incorporate the design process into your work. Making your workflow more structured and more formulaic, like the design process is, has numerous benefits. So, for example, if you ever want to expand or if you ever want to hire another designer to work along with you. So, work out or work on sketching out your own process that really works for you and your business and the way you design. Next time on Design Fundamentals, we're going to cover understanding the design brief. Thanks for listening.